It was a hard foul. I don't think that DiJonai intentionally came out to get her across the neck like she did, but it did happen, and I thought it was the right call. But, you know, one of the things about Nay is that she's going to play her butt off, man.
But our locker room in there, it's tight, and we have each other's backs.
I talked to Steph earlier in the day, too, and, you know, I think we forget a lot of times, like, we're human.
You see Caitlin in the press conference almost cover her ears and her eyes. Defend your players. First of all, you're wrong. It was a dirty play and she's gone. But when do you ever see in like the NBA a coach not defend their own players? She hasn't done it with Caitlin when Caitlin got punched in the throat.
The sports world is completely spinning out of control right now, and what is happening behind closed doors in the Indiana Fever organization is nothing short of an absolute cinematic disaster, kicked off by massive rumors that locker room footage is circulating showing players in open revolt. According to surging reports, foundational superstars Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham reportedly reached their absolute breaking point after head coach Stephanie White downplayed a vicious headhunting foul against Cunningham, with both players and team leaders allegedly letting the front office know they wouldn't stand for a coach who backs opponents over her own roster.
How far from the game of basketball we have spiraled. When we're talking about the WNBA, you know, we used to joke, it's like, oh, 0 days without drama in the WNBA. This league is living up to it at a rate and a level of concern that we haven't ever had.
When a professional sports franchise becomes the epicenter of political intervention, state-level executive backlash, and internal player revolts all at the exact same time, you know that the structural integrity of the entire team has completely fractured. We are watching a slow-motion train wreck unfold in real time, and the primary catalyst sitting right at the center of this storm is head coach Stephanie White. To understand the gravity of how bad things have gotten, you have to look at the unprecedented level of public outrage coming from state leadership. Indiana's own Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith didn't just passively disagree with a coaching decision. He publicly took to social media to explicitly demand that the Indiana Fever organization strip Stephanie White of her duties and fire her immediately.
Stephanie White, I've been a defender, the coach of the Fever. Get her out of there. Get her out of there. Fire her today. I don't want her back on that bench. Stop defending the other players.
Think about that for a second. When a sitting high-ranking state official feels compelled to step into the sports arena and call out a head coach for failing to protect her own players, the public relations crisis has transcended ordinary sports commentary and entered a completely different stratosphere. The firestorm erupted following a heated matchup between the Indiana Fever and the Chicago Sky, where a vicious play involving Chicago's DiJonai Carrington and Fever star Sophie Cunningham left the arena in utter shock. Carrington tracked down Cunningham on a fast break and delivered a brutal, flagrant-two foul that caught Cunningham squarely in the head and neck area, sending her crashing hard to the hardwood. It was the kind of dangerous, high-velocity contact that immediately triggers safety protocols and draws universal condemnation from teammates, staff, and fans who expect their players to be shielded from malicious intent.
Now trying to prevent the layup, but that is just a hard hit. That's definitely going to be upgraded, I think, to a flagrant-two, Ryan.
DiJonai Carrington is such an unserious person, because what do you mean you commit a flagrant-two and then you go to threads and play the victim?
Yet in the immediate aftermath of the game, rather than backing her player and condemning the reckless nature of the contact, Stephanie White downplayed the situation. She stood before the media microphones and suggested that Carrington was merely making a competitive play on the ball and didn't intentionally mean to cause severe harm. That single miscalculation opened Pandora's box.
It was a hard foul. I don't think that DiJonai intentionally came out to get her across the neck like she did, but it did happen, and I thought it was the right call. But, you know, one of the things about Nay is that she's going to play her butt off, man. She's going to compete. Nobody's going to go walking in for a layup. And so I don't oppose the hard foul, but I also don't think that she intentionally went for the neck.
For a fan base and a state that fiercely rallies around its athletes, hearing a head coach trivialize a dangerous blow to one of their core players felt like the ultimate betrayal. The backlash was instantaneous, ruthless, and widespread. Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith captured the collective fury of the populace when he posted online that no competent, self-respecting coach would ever take the side of an opposing player who had just committed a flagrant, dangerous foul against someone wearing their own uniform. Beckwith bluntly stated that the coaching was completely unacceptable and that the organization needed to make a change. But the political pressure coming from the statehouse was only one front in this multi-layered war. Behind the scenes, the internal dynamics within the locker room were reportedly reaching a boiling point of absolute rebellion, according to deep rumoring circulating through league insiders. The atmosphere inside the Fever locker room turned toxic almost overnight. Whispers and unconfirmed reports began swirling that the players, led by foundational cornerstones like Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham, were deeply unsettled and profoundly displeased by the lack of institutional backing from their coaching staff.
Nobody wants to see each other succeed. And I think that's a really painful thing for myself to watch. You know, it's tough. Like, that's my head coach. Like, I hated.
Word on the street is that a tense closed-door meeting took place where team leaders made it abundantly clear that if the leadership continued to turn a blind eye to player safety and public accountability, the friction would become unmanageable. While official statements always attempt to project an image of corporate unity, the body language on the court and the cold reality of the situation painted a very different picture. Sources close to the franchise hinted that players were privately questioning whether they could trust a coaching staff that seemed more interested in playing diplomatic games than drawing a hard line in the sand to protect them from dirty play.
I'm glad that they rescinded it, because for that action being minimal, like a brush, this is what should have happened and the right thing happened. What? Like, what is...
All I'm saying is I have flashbacks to college when my teammate bumped into a coach like this and it was a problem.
Where your teammate did what?
Bumped into one of our coaches this way and it was a problem. But I think when we analyze it, if Caitlin didn't say anything, it is marginal. I think rescinding it was fine. But I do understand in the moment how we got here.
Well, and this is why you have the processes in place for the league to be able to... That is a deep sigh. You good?
Yeah, it's just always something.
The tension was further compounded by the broader cultural and social crosscurrents that have continually hijacked the WNBA news cycle. With high-profile figures constantly under a microscope, every single press conference becomes a potential landmine. When Stephanie White finally broke her silence days later with a passionate, fiery pregame outburst, banging on the table and declaring that the hate and divisiveness trying to hijack the league would not win, she attempted to project an ironclad front of solidarity. She proclaimed that the team was united, that they go high when others go low, and dramatically concluded her remarks with a sharp warning to outside critics before storming out of the room without taking a single question. But critics and analysts were quick to point out that a passionate defensive speech months after the fact does little to erase the initial damage done when she failed to stand up for Sophie Cunningham in the immediate aftermath of the incident. The fallout didn't even stop at the borders of Indiana. The cultural shockwaves spread all the way down to Florida, where state officials like the Florida Attorney General weighed in on the broader climate of hostility and altercations plaguing professional women's basketball, drawing sharp contrasts about how physical assaults and aggressive antics would be handled differently under state law. The league is no longer just a sports league. It has become a massive cultural battleground where legal threats, political declarations, and fierce athletic rivalries collide on a daily basis. When players like Caitlin Clark are putting up historic numbers, driving massive television ratings, and helping shatter single-season scoring and attendance milestones, the last thing the franchise needs is self-inflicted drama stemming from tone-deaf coaching remarks. The Indiana front office, including key executives like Kelly Krauskopf, has faced mounting pressure from all directions to restore order to an organization that feels increasingly volatile. Fans across social media platforms have flooded team channels demanding accountability, reminding ownership of the high standards expected when running a premier sports asset. Simon Property Group and team higher-ups are reportedly monitoring the situation closely because a declining fan sentiment and endless off-court controversies can quickly translate to financial and brand fatigue. Even as the team continues to battle hard on the hardwood, putting up staggering offensive numbers and securing crucial victories against top-tier opponents like the New York Liberty, the cloud hanging over Stephanie White refuses to dissipate. The fundamental question remaining for the Indiana Fever is whether they can weather a storm where the state's executive branch is openly calling for their head coach's job and where internal locker room trust has been severely tested. In professional sports, a coach can survive a bad losing streak, and they can occasionally survive a tough schedule, but they rarely survive a complete breakdown of trust with both their players and the local community. As the season barrels toward its high-stakes conclusion, every single eye will be fixed on the sideline to see if Stephanie White can somehow claw back her credibility, or if the mounting pressure will force the organization to pull the trigger on a seismic coaching change that will shake the WNBA to its very core. Furthermore, when you analyze the sheer magnitude of how sponsorships, ticket sales, and merchandise distribution tie into the overall valuation of the franchise, the ownership group simply cannot afford prolonged instability. Every single home game at Gainbridge Fieldhouse has transformed into an electric spectacle, drawing record-breaking crowds who show up expecting athletic excellence and fierce organizational loyalty. When those expectations are compromised by a coach who appears disconnected from the emotional pulse of her locker room, the fracture spreads from the players directly to the loyal supporters in the stands. The historical trajectory of the Indiana franchise has always been built on grit, determination, and an unwavering commitment to protecting one's teammates at all costs. When that culture is undermined from within, the healing process requires absolute transparency, accountability, and leadership that commands universal respect. Whether Stephanie White possesses the capacity to repair these fractured relationships before the front office is forced into making an irreversible decision remains one of the most compelling and high-stakes storylines in modern professional basketball. Looking deeper into how media narratives shape public perception, the continuous microscope under which WNBA coaches and players operate has reached unprecedented levels of intensity during this current campaign. Every tactical substitution, every post-game remark, and every sideline reaction is dissected by millions of passionate fans and digital creators within minutes of the final buzzer. This hyper-connected digital ecosystem means that a single misspoken word or a perceived lack of defensive solidarity toward a star athlete can instantly snowball into a massive national headline. The Indiana Fever organization, having captured the imagination of basketball fans worldwide through electrifying play and record-breaking television ratings, finds itself navigating a delicate tightrope between athletic ambition and intense off-court scrutiny. The synergy between elite on-court performance and stable leadership is paramount, and any disruption at the helm threatens to derail months of hard work and team chemistry. As the league continues its exponential growth trajectory, capturing mainstream sports headlines on a daily basis, franchises are realizing that brand protection requires swift, decisive action whenever leadership is called into question by both political figures and foundational players alike. The coming weeks will undoubtedly test the resolve of the entire organization, leaving everyone waiting to see how management handles the mounting pressure. Moreover, when considering the long-term strategic vision for the franchise, the decision-makers in the front office must carefully weigh the immediate public relations fallout against the long-term stability of the team's culture. Building a championship contender takes years of meticulous drafting, player development, and cultural alignment, but it can all be severely compromised if the locker room loses faith in the coaching staff's willingness to protect them. The voices of veteran leaders and rising stars carry immense weight, not only within the locker room walls, but also among the broader fan base that invests time, emotion, and hard-earned money into supporting the team. When those foundational voices signal deep dissatisfaction, ignoring their concerns is simply not an option for a franchise striving for sustained excellence. As analysts and insiders continue to monitor every development closely, the pressure cooker surrounding the Indiana Fever coaching staff intensifies with each passing game, setting the stage for what could be one of the most consequential organizational crossroads in recent league history. Adding fuel to an already blazing fire, sports analysts across the country have pointed out that team culture starts from the very top. When leadership fails to establish a unified front during moments of crisis, the entire foundation begins to wobble. Fans who travel thousands of miles to watch their favorite players take the court expect an environment where competitiveness is matched by mutual respect and protection among teammates. When external physical altercations occur and coaching staffs respond with ambivalence or deflection, it sends the wrong message to the entire league. The ensuing debates on sports talk shows and digital platforms have only amplified the urgency for structural changes, leaving executives with little room for error as they evaluate the future path of the franchise.